everybody, happy Friday, and welcome to the Teachers of God Foundation, A Course in Miracles study party. Calling it a study group just doesn't quite cut it. And I was thinking on my way here, I think it's been 5 years since this started. And I read Gorgeous for God, and I got it in this bookstore, and I was so blown away. It caused me to open up my copy of A Course in Miracles that I had sitting on a shelf for 20 years. My mother gave me the book. For 20 years, it sat on my shelf, and I didn't throw it away, which is weird because I'd never keep stuff. I dusted it off, and then I went to a study group somewhere, and it wasn't that great. So I found out there was a study group here. And like Lisa Natoli was my #1 all-time favorite author in the whole wide world. I didn't even know she lived around here. So my mother called and she said, "You're not going to believe there's a Course in Miracles study group." This was like 5 years ago, maybe a little bit more, at Unity on the River. I was like, "You're kidding me. I'm going to go." I think it was June 7th. I remember the day. I remember what I had on. 2013. Okay, so yes, Bonnie was there with me. And my mother said, "You'll never believe who's facilitating the group." I was like guessing all these people. She said, "Nope." She said, "It's Lisa Natoli." I was like, ah! She was like a celebrity. She was like I don't know. And I was sitting here front and center, heart pounding. And I really haven't missed too many Fridays since then. And it just got better and better and better. And I love having new people come in. So welcome. The Teachers of God Foundation is a nonprofit foundation that runs online programs to guide people through living the principles of A Course in Miracles, to guide people through living in love and not living in fear. And they have a 40-day program, which is great for an introduction into A Course in Miracles, or great if you've been doing it forever. It's free. And for 40 days, you live a whole new story. You set all your story aside and you live, you make room for something new to emerge, and it's just transformational. And we have Living in Purpose, which is our mastery course for those who want to dedicate their lives to living this way. We have True Prosperity, which is an advanced course in unlimited abundance, and ACIM 365, where Lisa Natoli walks you through all the workbook lessons of A Course in Miracles. So, and all kinds of blogs and support, and we have a prayer team. So I love this foundation. They're just doing everything that they can and always changing and evolving and growing to bring more light and love to this world. So glad you guys are here. We're going to do a reading from the book from Cafe Gratitude. Thank you so much.
September 1st. Impermanence is a principle of harmony. When we do not struggle against it, we are in harmony with reality. And I guess it's the meditation. How about giving something away to a stranger today? Practicing the art of impermanence.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I love that thing about once you stop resisting impermanence. What did it say? It was really good. Tell me what that said again. Yes.
Impermanence is a principle of harmony. When we do not struggle against it, we are in harmony with reality.
So good. Oh, so good. Lisa and Bill are not here today. They are traveling. So if they're watching, hi, Lisa and Bill. We miss you. And we have a great teacher today, Kelly Russell, who is going to... Is it Reverend Kelly Russell? Reverend Bombshell Kelly Russell. Who's going to talk about labor. So I'm really looking forward to that. And this is the time where we greet each other, and instead of just, hi, how are you, we really like to pause and see the highest in someone, and you see them from that place in you too. So we like to use the word namaste, or I see you, or simply I love you like crazy. So let's take a couple of minutes to do that. I did all the program stuff. What? Oh, I know. Am I back on? Oh, hi, everybody. I'm back on. Is there something going on at Vicky's soon, or is that over? That's over. That was last time. Oh, okay. Well, oh, man. I guess I don't have any more announcements. We have there's a donate button on your if you're live streaming, and we have a love box back there. And if your donations and tithes are really appreciated. It helps us pay for this room, and we really thank you in advance. So I think I've covered everything. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our teacher for today and my dear friend Kelly Russell.
Do you need to turn her off? Yeah.
Okay, here's this. Thank you. Thank you, Linda, for that lovely introduction. I love you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here today. This is the start of what weekend?
Labor Day weekend.
Right. So we're going to go into labor.
Oh, damn.
It's okay, because we're going to do it all together, so it'll be fun. Yeah? So, does anybody know what the reason for Labor Day is? Anybody know the history? Any idea? Why do we have it?
Worker?
Celebrate the American worker. Yeah, exactly. And how it came, Bonnie gets the gold star. And how it came about. So, we know from learning in school about the Industrial Revolution, right? And it's this time of, growth in the country and industrialization, obviously, and factories and all of that, and mills, and so there had to be workers. And unfortunately, it was really a time where people were very much exploited. There were no laws. There were no laws to protect people who were working, so the working conditions were really deplorable, and they were unsafe. People died, people got sick, people got trapped in buildings, and buildings caught on fire. There were no regulations about anything. There was no health care. There was no minimum wage. There were children working in factories and mills. There were no child labor laws. And people were working literally 14 to 18 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week. Just really working to live. I mean, really living to work instead of working to live. So really terrible conditions. And so it was a really awful time. It was a good time for the burgeoning of industry in our country, but it was a terrible time for the people on whose backs that had to happen. And so when we think of labor, I think of a couple of different definitions of labor, and so I'm going to talk about a couple different definitions of labor today. But so when we think about labor in those terms, I looked it up in the dictionary because I love my dictionary and my thesaurus. So, definition of labor: physical or mental work, especially of a hard or fatiguing kind, to act, behave, or function at a disadvantage, as in to labor under a misperception, and to dwell on unnecessary details. Okay, so when I think of that, does any other word come to mind when you think of those definitions of labor? Especially, who said it?
Ego.
Ego, exactly. So that's what I want to talk about today with regard to labor, is how similar our ego makes us feel in terms of how the working conditions were for the early American workers. Okay, so some of the synonyms that I looked up were, for labor, were drudgery and grind, toil, exertion, just to name a few. There's also slave, chore, and working oneself to the bone. Okay, so when we think about how we are when we're under the influence of the ego, we're under slave, exactly. When we're under the influence of the tyranny of the ego, right? We are in this state. Everything feels hard. Everything feels like drudgery. Everything feels endless, like work. The conditions of our environment don't feel safe to us. We don't feel safe. We don't feel protected. We don't feel secure. We can sometimes feel like we're working for nothing. That why am I doing this? Why am I toiling away like this? What is the purpose? What's it all for? I mean, am I alone in this, or does anybody relate to this? Yeah. To feeling like that? When we're under the influence of our egos, that's what it can feel like, right? So that's what was going on with the workers back in the late 1800s. And so there was developing unrest because the consciousness was being raised, so people were starting to push back against these working conditions and against the imbalance of power and so forth. So there's this dude named Peter McGuire who decided that he was going to take a Monday off. He was going to inspire people to band together and to march in New York City, and to march in protest of the working conditions, and to demonstrate, to cause a demonstration, to let the people that were in charge, in effect, know that there was a burgeoning power in the workers. So the first Labor Day, the first true Labor Day, although it wouldn't be signed into effect until 12 years later, it was actually in 1882. And he told some people about it, and they told some people about it, and so forth, and 10,000 people showed up in New York City to march for the rights, to march and protest for their rights for better working and living conditions. Okay, and so it was, as I said, Grover Cleveland signed it into law 12 years later in 1894, and Labor Day became a law, became a national holiday. And so during that time, what was the solution to these deplorable working conditions that was being created, that was being inspired? Unions, exactly. Unions. So I just love that. Oh, and by the way, one of the things that I also love is that Peter McGuire was a member of the Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners. Doesn't that sound like something Jesus would have been a part of? Love that. So unions, the idea of unions got formed. And so what do we think of when we think of a union? Okay, there's the definition of union as the definition of union as regard to the labor force. But what else do we think of when we think of union? Coming together. Joining. Coming together. Oops. Joining. Did I hear protection? Protection. Did I hear anything else?
Bargaining.
Bargaining. Bargaining. Okay. All right. So I looked up union in the dictionary too. And so the definitions, oops, that's labor. Oops, sorry about that. Where are my union definitions here? Here we go. Okay, so the state of uniting two or more things, the state of being united, the process of merging or integrating disjoined, severed, or fractured elements, and a group with a shared interest or cause. So what does that make you think of when you think of union like that? Does that make anything come to mind?
Us?
Yeah.
Light workers.
Us. Exactly. All of us. Particularly the one that stuck out to me was the process of merging or integrated disjoined, severed, or fractured elements. Because we believe we are exactly that, right? We believe that we're separated. So union is us bringing ourselves back together. It's bringing ourselves back together in the light of God. It's remembering and recognizing who we are, right? So some of the synonyms that are associated with union, which I also love, are joining, coming together, yep, got it, fusion, harmony, hookup. I don't know, that has a whole other meaning now. And brotherhood, okay? So I love that. I love that we can think of Labor Day in this way. I love that it can have another meaning for us, not just about a celebration of the American worker, because it's not just about that. It's really more of a representation of us and the healing of our separation, and going from a place of fear, which could be defined as labor, right? Struggle, toil. And the workers back then, before they, as they were forming the unions, and that was not an easy process. That was a process where people lost their jobs, people died, there was a lot of resistance before the unions were actually able to form. But it was because people all banded together and empowered themselves through union. And they were able to bring about freedom for themselves as workers. And so I love the metaphor of that, of being able to bring about our freedom by coming together, by joining, by protecting, by joining together and coming together, we are protected, right? That's how we're protected, is when we remember who we are, when we remember that we are all one, when we remember our divinity. That's how we're protected, that's how we're safe. And that's where our security lies. Our security and our safety does not lie in remaining individual or being separate. It lies in us coming together. So then I thought about a labor of love. So what do you think of when you think of a labor of love? What's that? That's a little kinder and gentler way of thinking of labor. Sorry, I'm making all that noise. Labor of love. Okay, so volunteering. Okay, earth. Demonstrating. Demonstration of love. Yep. Anybody else?
Something you do that you put your whole self into.
Put your whole self into. Yep.
You don't expect anything in return.
Don't expect anything
Unconditional.
in return. Yep, and unconditional. Yep. So I also looked up labor of love, because I'm a dictionary and thesaurus freak. And under labor of love, it said productive work that brings joy or acts of grace. And so I thought about that too in terms of labor, in that when we are, while we're here in this world where we think we are, in this illusory life that we are dreaming, that we have two choices, right? We can choose with the ego, and in the ego's world, everything is labor, everything is hard, it is struggle, it's strife, it's scarcity, it is painful, fearful, heavy. Yeah, it's ugh, right? It's all of those things that are represented by what our ancestors experienced in their working worlds. And in their working world wasn't just like their working world and then they had all this leisure time. Their working world was like all the time except when they were sleeping. So for us to be able to experience a labor of love instead, being able to see what we do every day, everything we do every day, as a labor of love. So if we're doing that by joining, and if that's what we keep in our minds first, is that the first thing we do when we wake up in the morning is union. First thing we do when we wake up in the morning is, whether we do it in a formal sense, like we meditate or we pray or we do a Course in Miracles lesson or we study something else, or whether we just wake up in the morning and recognize that we are one with Spirit, that we are not alone, that we're not individuals, that we're already joined, that we're already united, that is the way for us to start the day in union. And then to allow ourselves to be in union all day long with every person that that comes into our reality, every person that we come across, that you're my brother, you're my brother, you're my brother, you're my brother. And so we can actually live in union all day. It just takes the willingness to be able to remember to do that. And that is a labor of love. That is a state of grace. That is the place where we would be living in that harmony. Right? Okay. So that is, so then I moved along to the other definition of birth. The other definition of labor. Which is to be in the process of birth or be in the process of childbirth. Okay, so now we're moving on to the fun part of today's program, where we're going to be giving birth. Okay, and so the definitions of birth: to be in process of giving birth or bringing forth. Okay, and just like our early forefathers, they're working to have better work conditions, working for safer environments, working for more freedom, working for better wages, and working for a better life. They were actually, their efforts, their labor was giving birth to a better future for the next generations that were going to be in the workforce, right? So when we're in that process of laboring, we're in the process of, there's something that's being gestated, right? There's something that's being that's being created, that's growing, that is developing. And, and eventually it's being brought out into the world, right? And so the synonyms that I love the synonyms that had to do with birth. The first synonym, and I was really shocked by this, but I loved it also. The first synonym that I saw was act of God. And then becoming alive, creation, blessed event, and beginning. And so I think about that and I think those are all pretty significant terms, right? I mean, that's pretty big. Act of God. The biggest. You can't really get any bigger than act of God, right? And so, what are we? What are we? Well, we are the biggest, right? But what are we doing when we are gestating, right? We have been carrying, as we've moved from being, and each one of us has done this. Each one of us is in the process of this. Even though we are all one, we are here in this room believing we are bodies and believing that we're separate, but we're all coming together as students of truth, students of Course in Miracles, finding this path and trying to walk it so that we can move from what to what? Separateness to wholeness, which is another way of saying from fear to love, right? And so in our journey from fear to love, it is like the labor process. It's like the pregnancy process, you know? So we start, you know, where we're not pregnant at all, and we're in the ego, you know, and we're experiencing all of the effects of the ego. We don't know that there's another way. So we may be struggling, we may be not connected to our divinity, to our light, we may not realize who we really are. We may think that we have to do it all ourselves and that everything's hard, everything's difficult, things are a struggle, relationships are difficult, problems happen, things happen with the body, things happen with finances, etc. And so there's all these different ways where we are living in this state where we're not creating life, right? We're in this state that the Course would talk about, as the Course talks about living in the ego's world of death and despair and sickness and loss and grief, right? And then, as we start to find the truth, and each one of us, you know, as the Course talks about, that each one of us will find our way to truth at some point along the way, and that there are many paths to God, that the Course in Miracles is one of them. And so for those people who are following the path of the Course in Miracles, there's some point at which, and you can probably, every single one of you can probably identify the time at which the Course in Miracles came into your life. Whether you, as Linda gave her beautiful story about reading Lisa's book, Gorgeous for God, and then picking up the Course in Miracles that had been on her shelf, a gift from her mom for 20 years. You know, however we came to it, we all, it's kind of like, you know, it's a moment in our lives when we remember, how did I come across it? Who introduced me to it? Or how did I find that? Or where did I go? Or where did I see it? But somewhere along the way, that became a seed that got planted in us, right? The seed of the light of who we really are. And I don't know about you, but for me, it's been a 15-year gestation. It's a long-ass pregnancy. And you know, just like in an actual physical pregnancy, I mean, what are some of the things that happen when you're physically pregnant? What are some of the things you notice? You throw up. Okay. Throw up. You're tired. You're uncomfortable. Okay. There's fear. Yep, there's fear involved.
Begin to think about something other than, begin to see the world differently.
But you begin to see the world differently. Yep. See the world differently. And start to feel a different kind of love. Is that what I heard? Okay. And so, as you are walking along this path of the Course in Miracles and you're reading, you know, and as you're reading it, and sometimes it feels like a foreign language, and sometimes it sounds like a foreign language, and sometimes it feels like I don't even know what he's talking about, and sometimes it can be really, you know, kind of set you on edge with some of the things that are being said. Especially because he says you all the time. I know I can't speak for anybody else, but when I first started reading the Course and he was saying, you know, you believe this and you think that and you do this and you do, I'm thinking, I don't do that. Like, I do not do that. But the very fact that I was saying I do not do that, and no, I don't do that, and being all up in denial about it was pretty indicative of the fact that I was. And so as the lessons, as you do the lessons of the workbook, as you read the text, as you come to a group like this and you hear the teachings, as you read or listen to other people's teachings of the Course, and over again, these teachings go deeper and deeper into you. They are surrounding that seed that's in you, right? And they're just that seed that is in you is bathing in an amniotic fluid of love and of truth and of who you really are, and that you're the light of the world, and that you are perfect and you're whole and you are all love and you are all light. And so the seed that is within us, the seed of truth that has been planted in every one of us, not just those of us in this room and not just those of us on the live stream, but everyone will have this seed planted in them sooner or later. And so as that grows and as it starts to really overtake you, it starts to bloom in your heart and it starts to shine out of you. And literally, we can't necessarily always see it with the body's eyes, but that light becomes so bright and it shines out in every direction, right? That is the light that we are getting ready to birth into the world, right? So what is it that we're birthing?
Love.
Who is it?
The future.
Christ. We're birthing the Christ. So, birthing the Christ child. That's what we're doing. That's what we're here to do. We are here to birth the Christ into the world. Right? So the first person that we know of that did that, and that the world sometimes, many people in the world sometimes think is the only person that did that, is who?
Mary.
Exactly. So Mary, she brought Jesus into the world, right? So she brought as we know it, the original Christ child into the world. But what the Course in Miracles teaches us is that the Christ child, or the Christ, is who we really are. That's who we really are. So our job, really our only job in this life, is to get ourselves, to prepare ourselves to receive that seed of the Christ child and to nurture it and to let it grow and to let it expand and to birth the Christ child into the world. Right? What other job is there?
That's it.
Because when we do that, when we birth the Christ child into the world, then who are we? What are we like when we have the Christ child and we're walking around? You know, you remember that? I guess it would be an experiment or a lesson or whatever that some kids do. I don't know if they still do it, but in high schools, they were doing it as an effort to raise awareness about teen pregnancy. And so they would give people an egg, a raw egg, and you had to take care of the egg and like it was a baby.
You give them real babies now with chips on them. Dolls.
Great.
Evolve.
Okay. Well, let's just say it's an egg for now. But what did you have to do with that egg? What did people have to do with that egg? They had to take care of it, not break it. You had to keep it with you all the time. You had to protect it. You had to what?
Or hire a babysitter.
Or hire a babysitter. You had to protect it, you know? And so what are we doing in this birthing of the Christ child? What are we like if we have the Christ child in us? What are we like? What does that look like? We're nurturing. This is what we look like when we have the Christ child in us. We're nurturing. What else? How are we? Are we judgmental? I'm talking about we're now holding the Christ child. And the Christ child looks like a gigantic light.
We're in love.
Right?
Happiness.
We're happy. Did I hear in love?
Yeah.
We're in love. We're in bliss.
We're elevated, we're connected.
We're elevated. We're connected. We are all light and we are all one. And so, why wouldn't we want to live like that all the time? Right? So that's where we're going. That's where we're headed. So what gets in the way of that? Ego. The mind, the ego part of the mind. EWE, which is...
EWE, the U.
Shape
All the others.
Oh, EWE, you, right. Right. Are allowing our ego minds to obscure our ability to spread the Christ light in the world. That's what happens, right? We get into, and it's sneaky. It can be very subtle when it comes on. And what does it start to feel like when the ego starts to come on and starts to obscure this Christ light beam that you're like holding in the world? It looks like fear. It feels like fear. It feels like anxiety. It feels like judgment. Guilt. Anger. Doubt. Sadness. Depression.
Feels like crap.
Feels like crap. Feels like total crap. Exactly. So being able to bring the Christ light into the world is about awareness. It's about becoming aware of when that ego mind is starting to obscure the light. Did anybody watch the eclipse last week?
Yes.
Okay. So you did? Wow. It was awesome. I watched it on the NASA website, and I also tuned into different as it was moving across the country. I was tuning into Missouri and Tennessee, I think, Kentucky, and finally North Carolina, and but I just thought it was so interesting how, there's the beautiful bright light, right? And we can think of that as like the Christ light that's just beaming. It's just there. It's all the time. It's always shining. Just because it's dark here doesn't mean the sun's not shining, right? We all know that, right? Okay. And then the moon. And at first it's just, it's just a little dark sliver. And then it just gradually kept moving over until it completely obscured the light. And, for people that were outside and had like their little glasses on and everything, and, when you first tuned in, everybody's partying, the sun's out, and then it just gradually kept getting darker and darker and darker and darker, and all of a sudden, it wasn't pitch black, but I mean, it was dark for being daylight. And people were like, this is so weird, and it's cold. It gets dark and cold. So all of a sudden, and I just thought about that's so much like what happens when the ego sort of comes upon us. Say, here we are, shining our big, bright Christ light, and it's all good, we're happy, and love, and light, and, all of that. And then just this kind of like a tiny mad idea just starts to come in, right? And it just kind of obscures it a little bit. But what happens when you start to have the idea, right, that let's just say somebody did something, somebody said something, somebody wronged you in some way. What happens when you have the one idea?
It gains momentum.
Mm-hmm. It gains momentum, exactly. So then you have another idea, and then another idea, and those ideas they're attractive, right? So they just keep attracting each other, and so it's one idea about somebody said something, and then it's another idea about what they meant, and then it's another idea about what you think of them, and then it's another idea about what you should do and how you should say something back to them, and nobody's going to disrespect me like that, and I'm not just going to be a doormat, and I'm not just going to lay down and take it, and I'm going to tell them what I think of them, and I'm going to let them know, and because I should do that, because I'm self-righteous, okay? Big difference between righteousness and self-righteousness. Big difference. And when we start to feel that self-righteousness, when we start to feel like, I need to do this. Like, I definitely know I gotta say something, okay? What could happen in there that might help us to get that light beaming back out?
Think positive stuff.
Forgiveness.
Think positive stuff, forgiving it. So being able to use the forgiveness the way that the Course presents forgiveness, which is that this is not happening, this is not even real, and I'm forgiving this person for what they never did, and I'm forgiving myself for dreaming it.
Yeah.
Taking responsibility for the way you see it.
Taking responsibility for the way that you see it. So it's taking responsibility for our perception, right? Because what we see in the world, any darkness that we are perceiving in the world, is a reflection of what is in our own mind. So nobody did anything to me. If anybody did anything to me, it's because I was harboring that kind of a thought in my mind already. And it's not a conscious process usually. It's usually a very unconscious process where I am so uncomfortable with that thought that's in my mind already, that I have to project it outward. Mm-hmm. And I have to project it onto somebody else. And now they're the problem, not me. It's got nothing to do with me. And so now I can be mad at them. And then I can make them I can make them wrong. And the more that I do that, the more that light that's shining right out like that big huge light that's like the sun shining during the eclipse, that literally does get eclipsed by that darkness. So being able to bring ourselves back to that place, to bring ourselves, what?
Pause.
To pause, exactly. And to, when we find ourselves getting annoyed with somebody, when we find ourselves wanting to make somebody wrong, when we find ourselves wanting to feeling that self-righteousness. It happened to me last week. So I'm going along and I'm thinking everything's great and everything's, I'm happy and it's my favorite time of year. I love late summer. I love the weather. I love the back to school energy. It's been beautiful out. I'm doing fun things. I'm with friends. I'm in Vermont, and things are great. I'm having a great day. And then it's literally like the little idea happens, the little thought comes along. And it's a thought about somebody that I love. And it's a thought about how they're ignoring me. My perception is that they're ignoring me and they're paying more attention to other people than they are me. And it just starts. I mean, I could see it. I can see it in retrospect now, just like that eclipse, just sliver by sliver by sliver by sliver. It just kept attracting more and more thoughts of, that they're not paying attention to me, totally snowballing. They're not paying attention to me. They're paying attention to everybody else. That means I'm not important. That means I don't even know if I should be here. I don't even know if I want to be here. Maybe I'll just reject everybody and not participate in any of the rest of the events that are going on. And when I get back home, maybe I'll do this and maybe I'll do that. And I don't deserve to be treated this way. And I don't treat people this way. And meanwhile, it's not even anything that was really even happening. Trust me, it really wasn't. It just was like a little tiny nothing thing. But my ego mind, man, took it and ran with it. And before I knew it, so it was keeping me up at night, and I'm waking up, yeah, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say that, and I'm going to be, because now I've decided that I definitely have to, what? Well, I have to talk to the person. I have to talk to the person and let them know that they were wrong, right? So because that's really the kindest thing that I can do, right? Let them know that they were wrong so that they can, be aware of it. And then because they probably don't want to be like that, so they'll probably want to change the way that they're being, right? So it's really, I'm doing an act of service to them, right? By letting them know that they're wrong, right? What did you say?
Full circle.
Full circle, exactly. And what did you say? Heard over here? Yeah, I'm going to enlighten them. Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'm thinking about it. And so I wake up in the morning and I see that person, and I say, I really have something I need to talk to you about, and I tell them. I don't say it in an angry way because I am a Course in Miracles student, and I am not like that. I'm the light, right?
You know better.
So I do know better because I'm all love and everything. So I'm just doing this for them and me, coming from a place of love. I'm going to tell you you're wrong from a place of love. And so that's a yes. I'm going to totally correct my brother, yep, from a place of love. And so I do. And what do I not do? What's the part about this whole preparation part that I don't do?
Pause.
I don't pause.
Take any responsibility.
I certainly don't take responsibility.
Don't
Who do I not?
guide.
I don't consult my guide. Exactly. I don't consult my guide because I already know what he's going to say. I already know. I already knows what he's going to say. He's going to be like, yeah, have that conversation because as long as you're nice about it, go ahead and have that conversation and let your brother know that he's wrong. Yeah, that's what he'd say, right? So that's what I told myself. I actually didn't tell myself that. I really didn't even occur to me to talk to my guide. That's sad, but true. So I had my feet in two worlds, right? So I had the conversation. And the person that I spoke to immediately did not defend, did not become angry or retaliative. They just contracted. And I felt like crap. Immediately, I felt so awful, and I felt so guilty. I felt like I had stabbed them, which I had, basically. I had with my attack, you know. Just because I formed it and put it in nice words, it was basically, you know, you're doing this to me. And I felt so awful about it. And so then it occurred to me to talk to my guide. After that had happened and that had taken place, I went and got my journal, and I sat down and I opened it up, and I've been getting written messages lately. Like when I ask a question or what do you have to say to me today, I'm getting an answer that I'm writing, and it doesn't sound like it's coming from me, so I'm assuming it's coming from Spirit. And it said something along the lines of, it was a kind voice, but it was along the lines of, you know, you really should have talked to me before you took any action here. And that I know you know this, but you often forget. And that the reason why you are only that which is lacking in yourself can you be seeing as lacking in another person. And so where are you not paying attention? And where are you not giving? And where are you not making people important? And where are you not taking care of a relationship? And since there's nobody out there, and I know you know this, that it becomes about how are you taking care of yourself? How are you paying attention to yourself? And how are you nurturing and making yourself important? Because the relationship with the self, who is Spirit, is the only relationship that you have. And so how are you, meaning me, neglecting that relationship? And that's what you're seeing is reflected in the world. And I was like, fuck. Yeah, okay. Got it. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's how it works, right? Is that's what happens to us, is we're shining our light, and what happens with the ego when we shine our light? What happens to it?
Kicks up some
It kicks up. It kicks up. It doesn't hide. No, it would be great if it hides. It doesn't hide. It gets stronger. It gets freaked out. It gets threatened. Nancy, what'd you say?
It goes from suspicious to vicious.
It goes from suspicious to vicious, exactly. And so I think that's what happens, is that, you know, we're going along, and I think it's one of those things where we sort of have to remember to be vigilant. You know, that be vigilant for God and for the ego, just knowing that the ego is going to want to do that. The ego is just an illusory part of our mind that believes it is separated from God, but because it believes it's separated from God, believes we are separated from God, it believes we have to stay separated from God in order for it to stay alive, right? So it's going to kick and scream and do whatever it has to do to stay alive. And so when we start to shine our light and we start to feel that feeling of union, when we start to feel that feeling of joining, and we start to develop that stronger, you know, when we start nurturing that seed of light that's inside of us, and we start growing it and allowing it to get brighter and bigger and more, to overtake more and more of us, the ego is going to do that. The ego is going to kick and scream. It's one of the reasons why when you start on a spiritual path, or when you you know, up the ante on your spiritual path, you start to do more of nurturing your relationship with spirit, or you do more study, or you devote more time to prayer and meditation or something like that, why you might notice that stuff starts happening in your life and the wheels start coming off the bus and you have like some kind of financial issue or something goes wrong with your, because now this is the other interesting thing, okay? And what happens when stuff like that happens in the world, you know, we can say it's our ego, kind of like our ego is like this entity out here that is like, you know, like it's like Oz behind the curtain that's like, you know, pushing buttons and levers and making stuff happen in our lives. It's not. It's in our unconscious mind. And what happens is that when we attack a brother, whether it's in our minds, whether it's something we say outward, or whether it's just with our thoughts, but when we attack a brother, then we have unconscious guilt about that. It goes right back to stimulating the unconscious guilt we have about separating from God in the first place. And that's such unconscious guilt. That unconscious guilt has to be projected. And so oftentimes the way the unconscious guilt is projected is by creating difficult circumstances in our lives, creating problems. That's what our problems are in our lives, you know, is just we, in our minds, harboring unconscious guilt from our sense that we're separated from our Father, from our Creator, from that love that you know passes all understanding. When we believe that we have attacked, we will create stuff that happens in our lives to make us suffer, to punish ourselves. That's why bad stuff happens in our lives. So when we say we create our own reality, that's what that means. And so what happened to me was how I did that after feeling this terrible sense of guilt because having hurt this person that I love and care about. I don't even think it was like 48 hours later that I got up in the morning, went to get out of bed, and I had back spasms. And I could barely walk. I was like, and every time I like sat down or like stood up, I would be like, and it was literally like stabbing myself in the back. And it came on just like that. It only lasted for a couple days. I'm fine now, which is also crazy because it hurts so much that you think you like broke your back or something, you know. And then on top of that, the same day that happened, I got a cold. Who gets a cold in August? I got a cold. It's gone. I don't really sound like I have a cold, right? This is 2 days ago. I got a cold with all the symptoms. And so I have the back thing, I got a cold, and I had plans with my friend Linda. I had to cancel them. So I'm like, punish, right? And I had been doing the forgiveness, and I really jacked up the forgiveness. I forgave the cold, I forgave the back, I forgave myself for being an idiot and giving into my ego and allowing myself to be self-righteous and all of that. And I practiced a lot of forgiveness and a lot of just releasing on that. And the back thing went away and the cold went away, literally in 2 days. And so, you know, it's whatever. That's the miracle is a shift in perception. So it was the shift in perception from sickness created by my guilt, feeling like I deserved to feel terrible because of attacking my brother, and which is really just attacking myself. And so the punishment and then the forgiveness caused the shift in perception so that I healed, and even though the body's not real, it's my thing that I believe I get around in, and it was healed. And so it was a great lesson. And it was a great lesson. Yes?
Did you fix things with your friends?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, I did. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Good question. Bonnie asked if I fixed things with my friend. Yes, I did. I did. I apologized. First, I tried to talk about it. Then I realized that anything that I said about it was not going to be constructive. And so I said that. And I said, I wish that I had never said anything. And then I read them what came to me through from Spirit. I read that to them, and that this person knows that I'm a Course in Miracles student and knows that I talk to Spirit, and so yeah, I did repair that. Thank you for asking. That was the full circle part. So that whole demonstration to me is like the shift from the labor of anger, of struggle, of fear, of strife, of toil, of a poverty of my consciousness, spiritual scarcity, to a shift over to freedom and better conditions and security and safety.
Better than the Christ.
And exactly, and union. That's really what came out of it, was union. And so I just want to read a couple things to you, and then I'm going to do a meditation. So I wrote, I want to read a lesson from the Course, and I also want to, a short lesson, and I also want to read something that I want you to think about both of these things today when you go out into the world and you go and do whatever you're doing this weekend for Labor Day, whether you're going to be together with family or friends, or you're going to cookouts or to the beach or celebrations or a parade, or whether you're just hanging out with yourself or whatever. But to think about Labor Day in this way. Labor Day represents a shift in perception from fear to love. It celebrates the strength of union. People no longer suffering alone and powerless, but rather joining in union toward a common goal of creating better conditions in which to live. To no longer be exploited by the tyranny of the ego mind that wants to keep us small, keep us down, manage us with fear. When we join together, we form a union that is so much greater than the sum of its parts. The idea that we labor in this life is a separation idea. Labor Day represents our choice to remember that we are a union, that we are not separate, and that when we recognize our brothers are one with us, the one Son of God, we become our truest, most powerful one self. So I want to pay homage to the other definition of labor that I talked about. So the birth. And this is a lesson that has to do with birthing the Christ child within us. It's lesson 303. The Holy Christ is born in me today. Watch with me, angels. Watch with me today. Let all God's holy thoughts surround me and be still with me while heaven's Son is born. Let earthly sounds be quiet and the sights to which I am accustomed disappear. Let Christ be welcomed where he is at home, and let him hear the sounds he understands and see but sights that show his Father's love. Let him no longer be a stranger here, for his Son is born again in me today. Your Son is welcome, Father. He has come to save me from the evil self I made. He is the self that you have given me. He is but what I really am in truth. He is the Son you love above all things. He is myself as you created me. It is not Christ that can be crucified. Safe in your arms, let me receive your Son. So I want to just close with a meditation. If you just lean back in your chairs, put your feet on the floor, remove anything from your lap. Let us breathe in love, breathe out peace, and picture in our minds that seed, the seed that got planted within each and every one of us as we toiled in the darkness and the scarcity and the despair of the ego mind, not knowing where to turn, not knowing what to do, not knowing the answer, being afraid, feeling powerless, feeling victimized. And that seed got planted in us. And that seed was a little light, like the smallest, tiniest birthday candle. It was just a little light right inside our hearts. And as we allow ourselves to remember who we are, to allow ourselves to open to all of the love that is pouring down into us, as we allow ourselves to be surrounded and held, that light within us becomes more radiant. It starts to get larger. It starts to get brighter. And soon, instead of looking like a candle flame, that light is taken over our whole being. And the center of it is the brightest, sparkliest, most shimmering, gorgeous white light we have ever seen. And the rays go out in every direction like a sun. And they fill this room. We see the rays from each of us crossing over the rays from one another. Our rays are intermingled and intertwined. We see in our minds our light fusing together with all of the lights from everyone in this room, so that this room is filled with a huge shimmering ball of light. And this light grows larger and larger until it is outside the building. And it grows larger and brighter and stretches further and further until it is taken over the entire town and all of the surrounding towns. And it keeps growing larger and larger. It's fueled by love. This is the Christ light that you are birthing into the world with your union with God. This is your labor of love. This light becomes greater and greater encompassing the whole state and all of New England. And this love, this precious, perfect love of God that is beyond all understanding. If you took all the love that you ever felt in the world and multiplied it by 1,000,000, it would not be a drop in the bucket of how powerful this love for you is. And this love grows larger and larger. This light goes brighter and brighter until it overtakes the whole country. It moves across the sea. It moves across the continents. It moves out into the universe. And it encompasses as far as any telescope could ever see or any spaceship could ever travel. This is your light. This is the Christ light. This is the love of God. And this is who you are. It's what you have birthed into the world. It's what you carry before you. It's what lights your path. It's what joins you in union with every other brother. It's what makes you the light of the world. And so remember, as you go forth today, that you carry this light with you. That this light illuminates your path. That this light guides you. That this light represents you asking it for help, asking it what you should do or what you should say or not say. And that this light is a reminder of how very loved and very precious you are. So, I offer a prayer. Father, Mother, Spirit, thank you for being with us today. Please make all of our decisions and choices for us. Thank you for guiding our thoughts, our actions, our perceptions, and our intentions. Please speak your words through us. Help us to hear with your understanding and see with your vision as we step back and let you lead the way. Please help us to be in a consciousness of non-judgment, gratitude, abundance, and love. And help us to practice forgiveness whenever and wherever it is warranted. Please make all our relationships holy. And help us to recognize the holiness in every encounter with a brother. And see the face of Christ that we have birthed into the world in every other person. We are here only to be truly helpful. We are here to represent you who sent us. We do not have to worry about what to say or what to do, because you who sent us will direct us. We are content to be wherever you wish, knowing you go there with us. And we will be healed as we let you teach us to heal. Amen. Thank you very much for being with me today, everybody. It's so lovely to be with you. Love you all so much. Thank you. Happy Labor Day. Yeah. Would you want me to keep this on? Yeah.
Yeah, let's do a circle. And,
Let's do a circle.
Bless the tithes and offerings.
The microphone. Are you still on?
Yeah.
That'll be good.
We're not, I think she just did a great
I did do a prayer. That was the closing prayer. So we're just going to do the tithes and offerings prayer. Remember, everybody, that there is the love box in the back there. And divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you. Amen. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, live streamers. Mwah.
What a great job.
Thank you very much.
so much.
Oh, thank you for being here. Thank you.